Hi everybody, and welcome along to the first of the Hard Working Class Heroes convention panels. My name is Jim Carroll. I'll be chairing this panel and the other panels over the weekend. We're also recording this, so don't forget as well, you'll be able to check it out on HWCH11 after the weekend. The first panel is called Meet the Geeks, and we have 5 of set specimen here on the stage. I'm not a geek. I know turning on and off a phone, which I hope all the panelists have done before we start. We've got 5 people here who are involved in tech to various extents, you know, as they'll explain when I actually introduce them. And what we've kind of gathered here today is just to kind of have a discussion about what technology is doing for bands at different stages, and particularly what technology bands at the level of, in the room here, the level of bands who are playing at Hard Working Class Heroes, what level they should be engaging with tech right now. I'm going to start by just basically asking each one of the people here just say a little bit about themselves and what they do. Starting with David from SoundCloud at the end.
Hello, hey, how are you doing? So my name is David Adams from SoundCloud. So my personal role is on the content side towards music relations. So in this panel of being a geek panel, I kind of sit in the middle. So I go talk to labels, PRs, and managers, and I sit in meetings, and people go to me, "You're a bit of a geek." And then I go back to SoundCloud, and we're in a tech company, and it's the other end of the scale where people are well above me in terms of tech space. So I'm kind of in that middle, and hopefully I can help to give you a relationship between the two, between what SoundCloud does and other tech companies out there, which can be really helpful for solutions for yourselves in terms of being an artist. To give you a background of SoundCloud, we're a social sound sharing platform. We've been around since 2008. Last May, we hit 1 million users, and about a few weeks ago, we just hit 7 million, just to give you an idea of the growth. So in terms of being a social sound sharing platform, we're about sharing sounds across the web. So them sounds are not just your music. They're everything from poets to comedians to news corporations. They can be you as an artist on tour recording like an audio tour diary, the same way you create photos and videos. And also with SoundCloud, we see ourselves as a platform. So as well as having like a website, we have an iPhone and Android app. And we also have an API. I'm sure I'll explain what that is later on. So from our API, we're connected now to almost 250 different applications. Within them applications, it's everything from stuff Korg have released, such as their IMS 20 iPad app, which lets you create a sound and export it directly to SoundCloud, or to something like Root Music, where Root Music lets you create a band page for Facebook. So from there, you can connect your SoundCloud account and pick your track directly from SoundCloud to play on your Facebook. So there's a whole realm of an ecosystem around SoundCloud as well. And yeah, just as well from an artist, public and private, we kind of see ourselves in an artist's lifespan from when they upload their first demo and privately share it with their friends to when they publicly want to share that music across the web to the wider world and share that content.
Cool, thanks very much. Natalia?
Hi, I'm Nathaniel Gravely from Digital Music at MTV. It's a pretty exciting time for MTV right now because the music group is pushing a lot of interaction behind music online in the digital space. We don't develop our own technology like Dave here, so we're not that cool. But we do interact with that technology, and we launch a lot of new apps. There's a lot of new brands coming out. We just launched a new indie website this past South by Southwest called MTV Hive. We also have the app MTV Music Meter and MTV Live and Local that are focusing on live music scenes around the states. And then the Music Meter actually tracks aggregation for social buzz as far as blog posts, Twitter, and Facebook, and it's a daily trending chart of artists that change from day to day. So a lot of exciting stuff going on at MTV. I also run the music blog, I Guess I'm Floating, so it's cool to kind of toe the line between a big media entity that's kind of coming up with creative ways to use this new technology and then kind of working on the blog side of things to kind of interact with it before it becomes a huge technology. So yeah, that's pretty much it.
Thank you. Dar?
How you doing? I'm Dara Nolan from Breaking Tunes. I work for First Music Contacts, and we set up Breaking Tunes as a way to get Irish bands kind of heard around the world internationally. It's set up, I suppose initially the idea was that it'd be like an electronic press kit for Irish bands as an alternative to the likes of MySpace and so forth. It's very hard to find specific countries. So Breaking Tunes, you go to the site and you can pretty much search like the most recent bands, search for bands, particular county, types of genres by how they tag their music and stuff like that. And the focus is pretty much on just getting Irish bands out there. As it's grown, we've kind of developed so you can apply to various different opportunities through it, the likes of Hard Working Class Heroes. which we hope to kind of, there's lots of, I suppose, mainly Irish opportunities at the moment, but the plan is that in the future that we would be able to facilitate Irish bands applying to the likes of South by Southwest or CMJ or, similar kind of international opportunities. And we've built a Breaking Tunes iPhone app, which you can just log on. You can see, Irish bands if they're playing anywhere around the world. If you're outside by Southwest, you can open your Breaking Tunes iPhone app and see what Irish bands are playing nearby. Tracks your location. You can listen to stream all the Irish bands with your iPhone app wherever you are. That's basically it.
Cool. Thanks, Dara. Carl.
Hi, I'm Cathal Fury from 45 Sound. I suppose we're a Dublin-based startup, and we will be slightly earlier in our life cycle than some of the other services here. What we're doing is we've developed technology that enables us to match up the videos shot at gigs by fans, excuse me, with a master audio recording. So if someone videos a track from one of your gigs, then if they upload it to our service, we actually match up a professionally recorded master audio with it. So when they upload it to YouTube, instead of looking great and sounding terrible, it sounds like, the band has worked really hard on the sound, and the sound on the video reflects that. That's kind of the jump-off point for our technology, but what it really boils down to is it's about connecting the band with the fans, and the fans kind of take more of a role in the gig and help you basically tell your story. So at the moment, it's for Hard Working Class Heroes. We're recording all the gigs here at Hard Working Class Heroes. We're recording audio for them, and we're going to make them available on our service so that anyone who's recorded anything on their cameras can upload it and trial our service. But this would be very much, at this point in time, our technology works, but it's kind of a very much a proof of concept and a trial of our technology. But down the road, I think we see ourselves as having a role, almost what Dara actually described it to me once as potentially a SoundCloud for live music. So we'd love people to try our service this weekend, and we have a lot of plans for it, but I might reveal that a little bit later on in the panel. Thanks, Ray.
Cool. Thanks so much. Clive?
Hi, I'm Clive Gardner. I'm from We7.com. We7 is a streaming service for mainstream music lovers. We have 2 tiers, so it's either free, supported by advertising, or it's paid for subscription. And if you are a paid subscriber, then it's unlimited on demand. You can choose whatever you like and have it on your PC or your mobile. If it's the free service, which is the majority of our users, then what you can do is start a personal radio station from any point, an artist, a song, a genre, and then we'll play you a playlist back to you, and you thumbs up, thumbs down, and we learn your preferences over time to give you more and more better results. So we've got about 9 million songs in our jukebox. We've been in the UK for 4 years. We've come to Ireland a few months ago and have a lot of work still to do here to raise some profile. And we have about 3 million users in the UK, half of which come to our website and half of which use our widgets and digital tools on media syndication sites like The Guardian and enemy.com and those sorts of things. All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so a couple bits of housekeeping before we begin. If you're tweeting this, could you please use the hashtag HWCH11 just so we can kind of see them up here in case there's any questions. And if you have any questions, there will be time for questions at the end. We're going to talk for about half an hour or so, and then I'll open it up to the floor for questions. As we can hear from the five people up here, I'm not going to call them geeks. The 5 people up here just kind of explaining what's going on. I mean, that's just a small, I suppose, snapshot of the amount of different technology plays that are available to bands right now in order for bands to basically get their music out there. Not one of. If there's no one up here who can actually break a band, let's get that one out of the way for a start. There's also dozens of other, I suppose, technology companies we could have brought up here as well, from the likes of Facebook to the likes of YouTube, whatever. There's tons of other ones. These are just 5 examples of what's going on right now. So I mean, my first question, I suppose, would be for all of you would be like, if you're a band starting up and you're looking up here in total confusion, kind of going like, okay, there's 5 of them up there and there's dozens more. How do I decide who's the most important? And don't all say that my company is the most important. If you're going to give advice to a band out there starting out, is it a case of, look, get your shit together and make sure you update every single one of these profiles, or do you apply a different weighting to it? Starting with Dara.
Personally, I think that each band should kind of tailor or use the sites that kind of are more suitable to their needs. You know, I mean, obviously, for breaking, if you're an Irish band, we think you should be on Breaking Tunes because that's what it is. We have like 3,400 profiles at the moment, and it's kind of hard to believe that there'd be 3,400 bands in Ireland. But yeah, I think not everybody needs every single site because you can get caught up in the technology side of things. You can think that all the work needs to be put in online, whereas all the work really needs to be put into your music. So it should be just used as a tool at the end of the day to get yourself out there a bit more once you're ready.
Yeah, Carl, you mentioned something very interesting there when we were talking before we came on, and you were kind of going about the fact that that in many ways Irish bands have to think internationally. They have to think about reaching beyond here because it's so small. And technology is something that makes it a level playing field. How do you reckon something like 45 Sound is going to help that?
Well, yeah, I think technology is massively important. Like people who want to make it in music, technology is what's basically enabling disintermediation, which means that it's allowing you to get from wherever you are, your bedroom here in Dublin or wherever in Ireland, out to a worldwide audience. And first of all, you absolutely have to have, you can't ignore technology. You have to engage with it. As Dara mentioned, you have to pick, you have to pick and choose because there's so many tools coming out. We discussed earlier on, every week, every month, there's a new tool, there's a new option. But you need to engage with these things, see what will work for you, and try it out. It's as easy to do technology as talk about doing it. So it's very important to actually spend the time. And everyone who you think, God, that person is brilliant with technology, every person had to, create their first account on SoundCloud or had to sit down and do it for the first time. What I see as the advantage of 45 Sound is I think video content is massive. And again, we spoke a bit earlier about streaming video and also just your video content. I mean, YouTube is now the second most popular search engine on the planet. And anyone here, if someone says, oh, do you fancy going to a gig tomorrow night for X band, probably the first thing you'll do is have a look on YouTube at a video and say, oh yeah, they sound okay. That's worth going along to, or it's not worth going along to. And what I see as the role of 45 Sound is people are going to video your gigs anyway. I think the only artist I've seen recently to take music down from an Irish concert was Prince when he played in Malahide Castle. They went round and took down all the content. This has been BMG or whatever.
Takes down everything.
Yeah, but everyone else, you're going to be up the next day on YouTube. So what I think 45 Sound does, we're trying to help the bands. We're not like a bunch of people in suits. I think there's a lot of similarities to what we're trying to do and a band trying to make it out there and trying to earn a living. And we think if we can help your music sound better, I think it's a massive opportunity for Irish bands to go international. YouTube, if you look at what you can do, you can pretty much upload unlimited high definition videos to YouTube at quite a big cost to them and no cost to you. So if you're going to the trouble of putting on a gig or playing a gig and you're preparing and you're really psyched up for it, you need to somehow capture that and put it up. And what I think 45 Sound does, it enables your fans to do it. And that's a massive thing. You need to build a tribe and you need to look at technology as a set of tools to build that tribe and following. And I'd like to think 45 Sound is one part of that, but as you can see, there's a lot of other ways you can do it.
Feel free at any stage to jump in if you've got observations to make. Dave, I got a question for you, just in terms of SoundCloud as well. I started using SoundCloud about 18 months ago, and I found it amazing in terms of like finding bands. But I'm kind of, I suppose, finding the bands from other searches. I'm finding it from like being mentioned on blogs. I'm finding it from mentioned like just searches come up on Google. You talked earlier on about like the social aspect of something like SoundCloud. I mean, how important is that in terms of like people following? People who are using SoundCloud, building up profiles of that, and how important do you think that is for a band to kind of use that as a way of building their profile?
Can I first just add to that last one? Research is really important. I think it'd be good to give you guys like Mashable is a really good place for a blog, TechCrunch, and also the Next Web. Like free blogs there to start getting some research and seeing what other use cases are out there. So then you can begin to realize what's happening there. I just thought it'd be good to share that information. In terms of being social, from a SoundCloud perspective, we have a massive community. So everyone who signed up, they're part of this community of people who want to create and share their sounds. So from there, you can and either leave time comments with someone, have a two-way conversation, or for instance, you can go share a track onto a friend's wall and talk about a track you really like. Or it could be even positions where we've had like for example, like people like Imogen Heap, who's then taken a crowdsourced track from fans where she's got like 800 different sounds. She's taken sounds, for example, like an egg dropping into a pan, to a stick across a fence, to the heartbeat of a baby. And she sat there and made her own track with them sounds, and she's used 46 of them in the final track. Now that's a new way of collaboration which didn't exist before, which this whole social aspect of music can bring across. So it's more than just where you can kind of see it hitting your social graph on Facebook and who's actually listening and the serendipitous moments on the sides. There's a lot more in terms of how social and actual creation process of sound and music can be bidirectional.
Clive, something we mentioned earlier on was just the amount of new apps that's coming out, the amount of changes that are happening, enhancements are happening to existing players. Recently, like HWCH11 has changed a bit. Maybe talk us a bit through that.
Yeah, last Thursday we changed our website to be a personal radio front end. That's something that we've done over the last few months, and it comes about from listening and watching to how HWCH11's users have engaged with the site over 2010. There's all sorts of different consumers, and I think just my contribution to the last question would just be the most important thing when you take technology away is what are you trying to do, and then technology helps you do that. You have to understand what you want to do first. And there's a lot of technology that's very smart, that's very clever, that's talking about engaging people at the cutting edge, at the experimental end, or at a specific event. And then there are lots and lots of other people that just like to listen to music, and they can preset radio 1, 2, 3, 4, and they can find something that's a little bit better than that, but their primary interaction is a sit-back one. It's saying, I want to start here, play me something, and if it's better than what I can get from turning it off and pressing button ABC, then I'm going to do that. And we'd found with HWCH11 users, that's what more and more of them were doing, and in fact 75% of our streams from our 3 million users were coming from people who just wanted to sit back. They didn't want to drive on demand all the time, because by the time they got to the second or the third song, they were struggling to know what they wanted to do. So, you know, there's all sorts of different services out there, and our one is looking at mainstream users, the type of streams that people are playing on HWCH11 in Ireland. It's Rihanna, it's Bruno Mars, it's that kind of music. We've got 9 million songs in our jukebox, but the challenge, again, for any musician using any tool, whether you want to get onto ourselves, onto Spotify, onto iTunes, onto any of these large aggregated catalogs, is, okay, once I'm there, what do I do? How do I create a little bit of noise? How do I get anybody to notice? So these kinds of realities of where the market is and the different segments of the market, you know, we're just evolving all the time as we listen to how people are using our service and adapt to that. It wasn't how we thought it would be 2 or 3 years ago, because we went through the whole process of licensing an on-demand jukebox because we thought everybody wanted to drive everything all the time. But actually our service is completely different from where Spotify are in the market. Our service is used mainly daytime use, 9 to 6. People are at work, they're at college, they're at university. They just want to play something. And they want it to be slightly better than the preset radio that they kind of know but don't control.
Just I suppose building on what you just said there, Clive, and kind of leaving off your respective hats in terms of who you represent, what have you seen lately in the last kind of 6 months or so? What kind of, I suppose, tech tools have you seen emerging that you actually rate, you actually like, and you think could help bands who are starting off, who are not at the level of where they sound like Rihanna or Bruno Mars?
I don't know. That's a tough question. There's so much stuff out there.
Yeah, see, that's the thing. There is so much stuff out there. But like, I mean, when you go back to your respective offices and filter everything out and look at something and kind of go like, man, I wish we had that.
You know, I've been using Turntable a lot when it launched, and I've seen a lot of success from the indie range all the way up into, like, you know, mainstream range of artists going into Turntable and having these rooms. And I think this is going to go to my overall point of whichever technology you pick. I agree with Dara, and you should pick whichever's best for your band and tailor it to your needs. But whatever you pick, you have to, like, just keep going with it. I wouldn't sign up for a bunch of stuff across the board just to have it and just to have, you know, a certain page here, a certain page there. The biggest, most important part of whatever you sign up with is the interaction you're going to have with your fans. I think they want to see you as musicians, but they want to humanize you too. Like, when they go to a gig and watch you, they want to talk to you after the show. That's like the best part of it, not just watching you on stage, but getting to talk to the band. And, you know, the greatest thing about touring is, you know, you can't go to every city all the time. All your fans don't live in one space, but when you're online and digital, everybody lives in the same space. They're all in the same area. So I think fostering that interaction, whether it be Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, whatever you want to use, SoundCloud, is a huge part of the game, and keeping up that interaction, because fans, I mean, even for myself, when I try to tweet at the Flaming Lips or Radiohead and try to get an @ reply back to me, is a huge part of the game. So I would say just the overall interaction from my standpoint, it's really hard for me to pick and choose like an exact favorite that we use because we try to play the whole field.
There's a really good article on Hypebot during the week. The Portugal Man's manager from TAO was talking about how they build up things. And just as you were saying there about the interaction and talking to fans, I mean, that was referenced all the way through the piece. The fact is, you know, that leaving all the tech tools aside, leaving Facebook updates, leaving tweets aside, the thing that worked for them most was just talking to fans after the show.
Oh, 100%. And to top, I mean, they lost all their gear. Somebody stole their van at Lollapalooza, and they lost like $10,000 plus worth of gear. And they tweeted about it. They put a twit pic of the van online. A week later, they found it at a pawn shop, and somebody reported to him on Twitter. So if you think just Twitter is for 140 characters of fun, like here's my new track, like you can recover like your lost gear on Twitter, as proven by Portugal the Man. So I mean, the power in social media is endless.
I think also there as well, we talked about social interaction, but also tech companies exist to solve problems. So it's problems of which artists have. So for example, creating a website. So there's now solutions out there which make that process even simpler. A great example is a site called Flavors, FLAVORS.me, sorry, without the U. So stuff like that, basically what they can do is they can aggregate all these social and content feeds and create a website for you really quickly. And then from there to then direct it to your own URL costs like $20, I think. Don't quote me on that. I think it's around that point. So something like that, a band wasn't in a position before to have a solution for creating a website. Tech companies can come along and they can create these solutions and they can serve this on a basis to a whole community of people, and it just solves the problems artists have. The same goes for the idea of like D2C as well. Companies like Bandcamp and Topspin as well, how they can help in that space of artists who are not the ones going through labels, but they can also begin to sell their music to, as well as we've got so much noise on the web, these more niche audiences we're now seeing. Another great example is Mobile Roadie. The app space, you would have to pay so much money to get a designer or app developer to create an app for you. How about you have a platform for you to put your content into that and create your own self-service app? So again, as well as like social interaction, it's solving problems, and I think that's the reason most people get involved with tech companies. It's disruption of problems before and actually bringing solutions to people who need it.
If I could just follow on from Dave's point there, that like when you're dealing with technology companies, I know there was a feedback from South by Southwest that, because it's an interesting kind of meeting of the media and music and technology, that there's a feeling that there's kind of people in suits looking at musicians and saying, oh, you're my content, grand, I just need to sign you up to this and then I'm going to get rich from you. And there's obviously a natural, I mean, the beauty of making music is you're going to be around when technology tears apart all the other industries. People are still going to want music. It's such a collective human experience. So while it's all up to play for and it's all changing, that one thing is not going to change. There's definitely going to be demand there. But I think it's important to note that with technology companies, the way the web is going, it can be quite transparent. You can find out about the company. For example, SoundCloud, I mean, you can read the main people in SoundCloud are all on Twitter talking about what they're doing day by day, telling you the story of their company. We're kind of doing the same. So, you know, if you're deciding what to go with and whether you trust a company, the tech startups, a lot of them, you can actually read a lot about the company and the people behind it, and you can decide if that philosophy kind of ties in with something you're comfortable with. So that's another way things are changing. And just one last thing, talking about like big trends, I think Twitter cannot be underestimated. I think the dismissal of it in some mainstream media is kind of childish, and it's people don't understand.
Speaking as a representative of mainstream media, I would say the mainstream media hasn't as much dismissed Twitter as embraced it. You know, I mean, I look at certain papers, not naming any Irish Independent. I mean, like the amount of Twitter, the amount of stuff that's kind of like generated from Twitter there is all over the place. You know.
Yeah, well, but even if you look at Irish musicians, if you look at, I think, what was it, down in Galway, down at the Roisin, you know, someone forgot a particular instrument and you just saw someone tweeting it out. Next thing, oh, no problem, one of the other artists said, oh, I'll try and bring that along. Or last night at 3 a.m, there was 3 bloggers from the Irish kind of music scene all telling stories on Twitter and stuff. So it's a fascinating narrative that you can follow, and it's connecting people together in very, very interesting ways.
It's just something you actually touched on there as well, Carl. It's something that we talked about earlier on. It's just I suppose the correlation between like tech communities and music communities. There's quite a lot. I can't remember, was it you, David, that talked about that earlier on? The fact that, you know, that, and you just said about it there, that like there used to be this old image before that like people come along to steal your music. The guys in the suits come along to steal your music. I mean, with tech companies, companies, okay, you can't say, well, it's guys in t-shirts coming along stealing music. It's not, because there's a lot of resemblance between, like, I mean, music startups, as in new bands, and tech startups.
Yeah, we're kind of in the same position. We have to make a community around what we do. It's been like our community team at SoundCloud's really great because they're going out and talking to people and helping them with their problems of using SoundCloud and making that experience easier, and also for us how we kind of put the word out about what we do and what we promote and what the cool use cases to use our product, and then also showcasing the community. So there's people using our product as well where we can show, hey, this person has just done this on SoundCloud and they've involved these many other users, and we want to highlight that and shout about that. The same goes for a band. So if someone's wearing your t-shirt, then hey, you should shout out about that. If you've got someone sends you a Twitter message, then how about you record some audio in SoundCloud and send it back to them as like a thank you message. Just make it completely two-way, and the same applies for bands as it does for tech companies. And as you build, like for us, as I said when I started, like for us, like we started a community of like, we had like 1 million users last May, now have 7 million. I think a real big impact as well is that is how we grew before that organically, the same way like how an artist can as well. So you spend time and learn your fans, and then you're going to reap 10 times more rewards out of that as well. Just be organic.
It strikes me that from what you're saying, all you're kind of saying to bands, almost be patient in a way that, like, if something new comes along and everyone does flock to it, like Turntable, for example, that you got to make sure. Well, first of all, something like Turntable, your music already is either there or not there. But in a lot of cases for bands, not to worry almost that, like, I mean, if your tech is already working for you, stay with that.
It kind of depends. Like, it's really cool to test stuff out. Like, as well as musicians, like music has always evolved because people test shit out. And like, sorry.
Fire ahead, we're all adults here.
Yeah. So the same way, like instrumentations and the type of music we see, try tech stuff out and see what happens with it. So do feel like you can just dip your feet in and just have a go, and you don't have to make it part of your whole campaign. You can just log on someone anonymous and just try it out and see what happens. You're not going to know unless you try it, but don't get overwhelmed. It's very easy to get overwhelmed, but don't feel like that. Just kind of see what's there, and if you want to test it out, test it. It's the same way as when you know new bands, like you hear about from 3 or 4 people on your radar. Like if I hear about 3 or 4 people on my radar about a new tech company, I'm going to go check it out. Same applies.
I think there's something interesting happening with technology as well. I think, and probably someone we're going to talk about in a few minutes is a part of that, but technology's kind of hit a critical mass in the last, and it's a really exciting time in technology. I think the broadband infrastructure is in place. I think costs of hardware and things like that has fallen so much, and things like Android that is, open things that would have been closed previously. But I think it's very important to look at these tools and to just absolutely kind of make use of them, and don't sit back and be reluctant to engage with this. But what is interesting, when you go and make use of it, more and more, someone was talking about recently that probably the best user interface designers, so the people who make things look good, are working with the web at the moment. And products sometimes, like the iPad 2 would be a massive example of it, that is an absolutely cutting edge product that someone 3 years of age, and my dad's 75, and that's his kind of babysitting tool. We give him an iPad to keep him happy when people are doing other things. Hopefully he won't be watching this. But the trend is that there's increasingly sophisticated tools that are straightforward to use. So if a tech company knows what they're doing, they should be able to build it in that way. So I think some of the gaps, some of that kind of fear of, God, this is a very complicated, more and more companies are getting their head around that and providing you services that they explain clearly, that are quite easy to use, and that are really powerful. So there's really no excuse not to jump in.
Yeah, good companies self-serve in any form. Like if you're a good tech company, like the product you've created is self-serve, and anyone can go on there and use it. So yeah, if that doesn't happen, then they're not releasing a good product. The same way, if you can't go in and like the music you're listening to, then they're not creating cool music.
I mean, and one person who's definitely, I suppose, was at the forefront of bringing in simple, effective, innovative products that are easy to use for toddlers as 75-year-old fathers was Steve Jobs. And like what I suppose what Apple did with the music industry as well has changed it. I mean, would it be fair to say that we wouldn't be having this discussion if it wasn't someone like Steve Jobs?
100%. There's no way we'd be having this discussion. I feel like there's nothing I can say that's going to do his legacy any justice. I mean, the guy was like Thomas Edison for our generation for the most part. He's going to go down as one of the greatest. The way he mainstreamed everything from iTunes to iPads to apps to iPhones and made it available to like the masses was incredible. And that's, I think, what every technology company kind of strives to do. I mean, I don't work at one, but building a brand and, you know, building anything to deliver to an audience, you're going to try to build it with like the most craft and caring you possibly can. But at the end of the day, you want to get it to as many people effectively as you can. And I think he was the best at that. He thought of these genius ideas and made them so accessible to so many people. Gonna miss that guy.
But also, what he did with the music industry, just dragging it almost like kicking and screaming into the 21st century. I think in terms of like showing how technology companies, I suppose, could work with record labels, it was definitely, yeah, that was how to do it. But also from the record labels' point of view, I mean, they kind of resented it. And something I want to kind of throw out to you is, we talked earlier on about like disruptive technologies and things like that. And one thing that a lot of technology companies do in terms of music is, you know, it's almost a case of like, I mean, shoot first, ask questions later. You know, that they will go ahead, they will do it, they will use the content that's there, and then come back and look for the permissions and licenses later on when it's proved to be a success. You know, is that just something that the music industry players are going to have to get fucking used to, or is there any way of putting the genie back into the bottle, or is trying to put the genie back into the bottle at this stage really, really stupid and something that should really be left in 1998?
Well, I think like it's interesting because like the internet is incredible. I think Steve Jobs is kind of one of the characters of that, but like the internet goes back to a very, like the internet is so disruptive and it's changing so many industries and tearing them apart, and it's partially because it's a strange product of kind of, it was military funded, a lot of academics were involved in it, but also a bunch of hippies were involved in it, and it's this strange creation that's changing things so much. But one thing that's interesting about the internet is anything, like if you send a drunk tweet out, you know, in 50 years time, your grandchildren, that will be part of the equivalent of genealogy or something. They will be going back through and reading that drunk tweet and going, oh my God, what was he thinking? So in the same way, I mean, yeah, the option is open to companies to grab music and use it and do what they want, but I think it'll come back to bite them in the ass in the end. I mean, if you treat musicians and their music, because I do a lot of video work and I've been in the same situation, music is brilliant to set to a piece. I actually asked Dara to use something a while back, and I've used Miracle Bell stuff before and things like that, but it's the same thing. If you treat people properly, you send them an email, you ask them nicely, explain what you're coming from, what you're trying to do, I think bands will respect that. And down the road, if you're going places and you haven't acted ethically and done things properly, it's going to come back to bite you. If you treat people as you'd like to be treated, I think the internet is pretty fair like that, you know, so.
Can I just say as well, I think that you're talking about disruptive technology. I think like that the internet and how it's affected the music industry is kind of a double-edged sword. Like on one level, like CD sales have, you know, hit the bottom pretty much. You know, they're lower than they've ever been. But at the same time, like for a new band that's out there, who previously would be making music in their bedroom and passing around a few tapes to their friends in the hope that someone might pass it on to someone else, you know, get a bit further. Now you can just put something up on Bandcamp, and a blogger might find it within a couple of weeks, couple of months, whatever, couple of hours, exactly. And all of a sudden, you know, you're being heard around the world, and people are probably downloading music for free, but at the same time they're sharing it. They're kind of going, this band are great, they're sending it on to other people. That never existed before, you know. So I think it's double-edged. Like, you know, it's disruptive for a lot of people. I suppose it's disruptive for a big industry, but it's kind of good for the small guy.
I would say the test for Apple is what they do with streaming, and can that really change the consciousness? Because ownership versus access is the next stage, and what they've done with iTunes, it's still to do with ownership. It's still to do with a track. Of course, they unbundled, and that created some new economics. And the digital growth hasn't been anything like the fall in physical. But you know, the major labels still think towards physical because 70% of their sales still come from physical when you're talking about albums. So those campaigns are still based around shipping bits of plastic, however archaic that may be. And iTunes is 80% of the digital revenue. So the industry hasn't been very good at building other places. 80% into one retailer is not very good for the industry either. So there's still lots and lots of things to do, and that period of transition is still being adjusted to, because everybody wants access to things, and what iTunes finally does with its subscription and how that works and how that's transportable across devices, I think that's when that's really going to transform the behavior and the industry along with it.
If I could just add something small to that, I think a very interesting guy in the tech industry is a guy called Jeff Bezos, the guy who set up Amazon. And it's interesting because Breaking Tunes backend is sitting on Amazon's web services, and the 45 Sound What we're developing is all sitting on Amazon's web service. For a tech startup, it's amazing infrastructure that you can access for a few dollars a month or a few quid a month. But Jeff Bezos was asked recently, kind of something similar to this panel, what he thinks is coming down the line in terms of technology. And he said, I thought it's a line that particularly struck me. He said, well, I'm not sure exactly what, I have my own opinions on where things may go, but you know, he wasn't too much into revealing that. What he did say is, I know this much, I think we're still on day one. And for someone who was visionary enough to start off Amazon and where Amazon is at the moment, not only in retail, but you know, supporting infrastructure for startup companies and things like that, when a guy like that says we're still on day one, I think it's, so in terms of the debate about like where music distribution is going and where iTunes fits in and how the record labels are going to adapt, like hang on to your seats, because like the internet has really hit critical mass and we're really going places with this. So again, engage, do your reading, do your research, and do it. But I think things are going to accelerate, and Twitter maybe is part of that as well. That there seems to be a cycle that's accelerating all the time. Even you guys were talking about it recently about even in terms of people's taste in music, they're moving on to one thing and moving on to the next. So I think the technology is going to iterate quicker like that. So it's very much, you know, this is only a snapshot.
But like the problem with something like that though is like, yes, technology is moving all the time, it's moving really fast. But you take the creative process of people who make music here in the room, and it takes time, you know. It takes time for them to kind of like I suppose, come to the boil. I interviewed James Vincent McMorrow at the start of this week, and he was saying that he released his album in early 2009. He spent 6 years before then, like writing, sorting his head out, spent 4 years in his parents' house in Malahide on the piano, just working stuff out. He went to London for a year, which turned out to be a total disaster. Came back from London with just like after 5 weeks recording drum parts, beautifully recorded drum parts, just drum parts. You know, it took him a long time to kind of like reach the stage where the album's ready to go. So it's like we're talking like almost like this very slow gestation period, this very slow creative process versus a tech process which changes every week. So it's is there a balance there, or are there two things on two different tracks?
Like, first of all, the web's very instantaneous, as we all know. So obviously there's this very wanting to react to this as a musician, to upload content as soon as you make it, like a band putting like their first demo from like their first practice online. So you have to remember there's parts of the web which kind of help you to think in other ways, like just like privately sharing some demos back and forth and working that way. And that's where I think what's going to be really important is the idea of like how we said the web's getting to like a critical mass. You can say there's like loads of noise, but there really isn't noise on the web. You have to find it to get the noise. So I think a good way of how the web and the internet's going to evolve is the idea of filters. So the people who are key people to listen to. The same way in James Vincent McMorrow's situation, that would be
Vinnie Mac.
Sorry?
Jimmy Vinnie Mac.
Sorry, wrong dude. I was going to say, so in that situation, it may have been the label when he was like, this is the point where you're ready, or it's your manager in terms of what's happening there. So it's kind of when them filters kind of work and the people around us. Like a good way of the web is we can get feedback on our first demo and collaborate as a group of people. But in the same situation, you may want to work away from that, and then you find that point when you kick in. I think, yeah, from there, there's going to be a brand new set of filters of people as well, once that music's online, who pick what's happening. It's like everyone can kind of have a voice, but who you're going to listen to.
Just so continuing on the second part of that kind of question about the acceleration of technology and how things are changing so fast, you know, I mean, does the panel think there's any break in place? Is there any stop sign in place? Or is this going to be the way it is? Just get used to it. Things are going to change. Things are going to change rapidly. Used to be years ago, you bought a new computer, fine, it was obsolete the minute you bought it, but you got at least 6 to 9 months, maybe 12 months out of it before some new model came in. Now it seems that with new tech, stuff is changing that fast. So get on board or wait your turn.
I think it might come back to what we said at the very start of the discussion, that technology is ultimate. I mean, there was a time when the wheel was technology. You know, technology is just a set of tools that we use, and we just call it technology because it's relatively new to us. So you have to step back and say, is this relevant to me? How can I use it? What can I do with it? And I think that's a really valuable approach. And my thing is, even listening to your description of James Vincent McMorrow there, I think, again, telling stories is what we're used to since we were gathered around a fire and we were first able to kind of verbally communicate. So to me, again, take a step back if you're worried about the speed of technology. What are the basic things that are going to remain there? Telling a story and I think building a tribe are the two things that, no matter what else changes around, will make you viable as a musician. And I think even, so if it takes you 6 years to put music together, I think it's really important. that he tells that story every time he gets the chance. So people are saying, this is James Vincent McMorrow, but this was the gestation period of it, and explain and be transparent about what you do and show your passions. So, you know, rather than this, you know, kind of hamster wheel of chasing technology, take a step back and go, like, can I use this to build a tribe? And if you've got a story to tell, I think what's brilliant, talking to Dara about this earlier, again, we were just discussing before we came in, but it is also the question of when record labels, I think, had a greater role, you could have a great story to tell, but you never got an opportunity to tell it. You know, Clay Shirky wrote a great book about the web a couple of years ago called Here Comes Everybody. He's basically saying, like, you know, the internet, you know, here's your chance to shine, here's your chance to tell your story and do things. So bands now have the opportunity to tell their story. It's up to them to do it, but there's no one stopping them telling their story.
Yeah, James Vincent McMorrow story is very good. It's in the ticket next Friday.
I was just going to say, like, a fun use case I remember was a band called Frankie and the Heartstrings quite recently. Their PR marketing team, digital marketing team in the UK is a company called Radar Maker. And so they worked the campaign instead of putting the tracks online first. They worked towards data capture and then inviting them fans in and then having their own site where fans get involved and they would send them a track personally. So working a bit different from just trying to push and be too explicit. At first, they kind of worked it backwards, and then the idea of saying tribes, they're kind of buying into you and you're giving smaller segments of that experience at certain points. So that's how a good way, especially to like organically build something up from earlier on. I guess when you're going to be a bigger artist at some point as well, so then you got to think of then what campaigns can work on that bigger scale. There was one recently last week around the Blink-182 release, where you used SoundCloud to stream it, but more the fun part about that was they used something called Simple Geo. So Simple Geo, as you logged in, it grabs your location on the browser, and from there, because the name of the record was Neighborhoods, it grabbed your neighborhood off your geolocation. So mine was like Moorgate, so just everyone around the Moorgate area in London. And then from there, it just opened a chat box, so very much similar to the Turntable FM idea. So as you stream the album, you can have a conversation with people in your neighborhood. So stuff like that of how it can also be a creative entity as well. And so, yeah, so for a band like Frankie and Heartstrings, earlier on, be organic, invite certain fans through and start a process. Then top of the range like Blink-182, they can create a more creative, overall aesthetically pleasing experience and invite them fans to interact, as we said earlier on, which is another great way if you're doing stuff on a mass scale.
Okay, before we turn it out to the audience for questions, maybe you can each kind of like just give, I suppose, look into your crystal ball and see where you think things will be 12 to 18 months from now. Not even just for the companies you work with at the moment, but just in general. I mean, if we have a panel like this 12 to 18 months from now, are we still going to be talking about apps and streaming, or will we have moved on to something else? Will iTunes still be such a big player? You know, or like, I mean, will it be a case that every band when they're starting, the first thing they need is not a manager, it's a tech?
Personally, I think that, like, you know, at the moment, the way we embrace music is, you know, we download free music online. We can stream to a certain extent, but it's all kind of connected to the computer. I think when the internet technology gets to such a point that it's integrated into your household, you know, that you can have, you know, an application in your kitchen that you can stream music on, that in your car, that, you know, on your phone, but do it effectively. At the moment, like, it's pretty useless. You know, I mean, you can't really. No, it's not pretty useless, but it's not something that you can have the music you want everywhere you go, because in Ireland you run out of reception, so you can't even access your data. You know, simple things like that. But in the future, where we're all connected, where your household is connected, where it's in every single home, that's when streaming is going to be amazing. That's when the cloud will be actually useful. Do you know what I mean? And I think that's when it'll all change completely, forever.
I was going to say, so it's how kind of software reacts to hardware. So like these little bad boys. Another great thing Apple have created, and obviously Android phones as well, like these are the remote controls for our lives, really. So how them processes and how we engage with, or tech companies can engage users via phones. And so being more mobile optimized is one place in particular. And then how else they develop like apps is the first place for it, but where can that go in the future? And what type of hardware will be next as well, because then we'll be reactionary to that also.
As the iPhones and Droids continue to grow, the mobile support, I think live video streaming is going to be a big area. I know for us at MTV that we're focusing on now, and probably for the future. I mean, just the past year, there's been 650% growth in the amount of video streaming. Like last year, and I think in the States, people spent 1.4 billion minutes watching live streaming events. And that's everything from, Ustream to Justin TV, anything that's live. And I think it's a huge area for musicians to focus, not just from a festival standpoint where you're going to have your Glastonburys and Bonnaroo's and Coachellas streamed for people to watch all around the world, but doing stuff like filming your band practice. For instance, Band of Horses, their last album they put out, they premiered the album via a Ustream session that was nothing more than them sitting in a room with the camera focused on a turntable as the record spun the whole time, and they flipped it over. They made funny little post-it notes and put in front of the camera, put little action figures on top of the turntable, but there was 15,000 people, 20,000 people just watching this turntable spin in circles as the record played for an hour. And on a similar note, like, smaller bands, like a band I like, Candy Claws out of Colorado, or Foxes and Fiction in Canada, really small bands that are making, impacts, but they're not huge like Band of Horses. They're filming their practice sessions online as they make new songs or jamming something out, and there'll be like a couple hundred people watching, but that's a couple hundred people that don't get that interaction. Like, they're not going to be in that space. They're not going to be there watching you practice, and they're chatting with them, and, oh, did you like that song? What was that song called? It was new, blah, blah, blah. I think video live streaming on a larger scale for festivals and, like our series in New York, Live in NYC, is a big thing. But I also think, just interacting with your fans and having that ability to show them what you're making whenever you want to show them, whether from your phone or from your computer, you have that access to show them that. So I think streaming for us is a big area of interest. And moving forward, I think next year especially, you're going to see not only all these festivals being streamed, but, these events where people are trying to bring that live interaction. The one thing I think that's never going to die about music, you can argue like the inconsequential nature of an MP3 or how the CD is completely dead, but the live experience at a concert is never going to go away. It's always going to be the same. And I think when you can bring that to a fan that maybe doesn't get to see you because they live halfway around the world, or they're stuck on the West Coast and you're on the East Coast, you can just tune in and watch them play a show, or they play your favorite song here but not your favorite song when they come live. Like, you still get to interact and see that. And even to another extent, like controlling set lists via social media is something we've been experiencing with too. With Live in NYC, there's been people tweeting like, oh, they should close with this song, they should close with this song, and they've changed their set list based on what people are tweeting about the live performance. Like, it's so cool as a fan to be sitting there watching this on your computer or your iPad or Xbox, whatever you're watching it on, and be able to change the event of a concert from wherever you are. I think that's so cool, and I think that's something that's just going to grow exponentially next year.
Thank you.
I think as far as technology, successful technology is going to bring in people that are not using it. So we're going to see it around us based upon how many smartphones are being used now, what smartphones can do. To the mass market, technology itself is just a means to an end. They press a button and they want something to play, and where that comes from, how that's delivered, is not really so important to them. The best applications are going to be simple, they're going to be personal, and they're going to be portable, because multi-devices is what we all have. If there's no reception, then it needs to be cached, it needs to be buffered. But the person that's pressing the play button doesn't care about any of that. They just want that there when they've got that choice. And what my musical taste is, what my friend's musical taste is, that's something that needs to be portable. That's something that needs to be carried around, so it becomes device agnostic and technology agnostic. And that's what I think the future will be.
Thank you. Carl?
I think probably to support what Nathaniel was saying, I think video is kind of the top of the pyramid in terms of online content, again, for the simple reason that it's what we're used to since we began communicating with each other. So whether it's live stream video or video that's recorded of practice sessions or gigs or whatever, I think video, and again, the speeds online are kind of getting there, the technology's getting there, HTML5 video streaming. There's various little bits and pieces that you don't have to know a huge amount about, but be aware that the bricks are starting to fall into place for online video to work better. And I think it's brilliant that I had a small part, but Magnet streamed from the Grand Social last night and are streaming here from the Button Factory tonight for the first time at Hard Working Class Heroes. And I think that's a brilliant way to showcase what's going on at this incredible event, in Ireland and around the world. I think that's really important. And I'd like to think as well that I suppose the technology we have, 45 Sound, I know this isn't a plug, but I think it's a way of telling the story of a live event quite well. It's another interesting way of telling the story. But I think I'd like to close on a point that you said, what's going on 12 to 18 months down the road? I think what's going on 12 to 18 months, the people here in this room have an opportunity to have a say in what's going to happen. And I think I'd like to maybe ground this discussion like that. it's not happening anywhere around the world. It's happening here in Ireland with Irish bands. You know, we speak the language of the world. We're known as incredible communicators. We have all the top technology companies in the world based here in Ireland, and we have an incredibly vibrant music scene. So in terms of 12 to 18 months down the road, I think there's massive potential, like, for people to really pick it up. Like, you know, if you start today with a new strategy, or combining with other bands, or working with people, working with Irish technology companies, I think there's definitely a potential for Irish bands and Irish technology companies to work together to really go places. And I think that's very important to note, that you're not passive when it comes to the future. You can actually have a role in it, and I'd like to think that what we're doing could be a part of that.
Cool. And it's also, like, I mean, just worth bearing in mind as well, from band's point of view, in 12, 18 months' time, it's just going to be, there going to be a massive improvement. It's interesting, you know, as you were all kind of talking there about it, and I was thinking, yeah, tech changed really fast. I saw two bands last night that I first saw 2 years ago at Hard Working Class Heroes, We Cut Corners and The Dying Seconds. And both of them have come on so much in 2 years. You're kind of wondering, okay, where will they be in 2 years' time? But sometimes, I suppose it's just that point again, that the creative process is quite different than the tech process. Okay. We've got a microphone out there somewhere, haven't we? We've got a microphone and we've got 10 minutes. So if anyone's got any questions, just put your paw up and we'll get a microphone to you. No, oh, front row.
Just start you off. It might not be a question so much as a comment. My name is Carrie. With the risk of us losing our opposable thumbs, I think. I just wonder, I think probably the only thing that's going to keep us using our thumbs is texting, for starters. I just wonder, am I the only one who doesn't think like technology streamed people seem to think? And I would like to know, when do you think we're not going to use stuff that we can hold in our hand anymore? Like a CD? Is everything going to be MP3? And I also worry about where a thing is going, but that's probably because I'm from an older sort of a way of thinking. I don't think I would like to hand something like a phone to somebody like, I'm going to see Elvis Costello play next month, for instance. I don't want to hand him a phone and say, sign that for me. You know, I would rather have his CD to hand to him.
I think from the point of view of the CD, for a start, I mean, I don't think the CD market has gone by any shake of imagination. I mean, leaving aside the fact that 70% of major label revenues come from CD as well, there are still people who collect CDs, and there's still people who buy CDs. You know, I don't think the day of the CD dying, I essentially don't so much the day of the CD dying, but day of the physical format dying out is ever going to happen. I think we as human beings kind of like value tactile things, and like people will actually buy the CDs. And also for emerging bands coming out, their merch stand. If you go to the merch stand, I'm sure the biggest thing that's selling is
T-shirts.
T-shirts and
it's not like saying that point. It's the tangible product within it. Like people want to buy into a brand and that's why D2C businesses is really cool in terms of how you can sell certain tangible products. It doesn't have to be just a CD, and how you can then sell a fan a more interesting product. So kind of think outside the box. Like someone gave me a match thing today with like a little note on it. That was awesome. I'm not gonna throw that away because that was a cool little product someone made for me. So try and think outside the box of what you can sell to your fans. They're buying into your brand. They're not just buying into your music. So you have to think that in terms of what type of merchandise and stuff there is within that as well. And then you can go to these D2C platforms as well and sell that type of thing and bundle it with other things such as just the digital tracks as well. So it's good to think outside that box. And also a cool point about like texting and stuff. Like I kind of disagree with the point of video because I think audio can be bigger than video on the web. Like we're a very early stage in terms of what audio can do. So in terms of that, like why do we need to text when we can click one record button and record that piece of audio and then share that across the web? Maybe from like the first word our little kid says, showing to our grandma and grandparents, all the way through to just your thoughts from the day, and also businesses like sharing whole meetings and stuff like that. So I think we're a very early place in terms of the web. It's very mute in terms of what we hear, and I think audio in terms of that's going to exponentially grow over the next year as well.
Any more points to add?
I just think things get really powerful when you mix online and technology stuff with real life things like what you're talking about, tangible things, handing over and having a real conversation with someone. So like some people are in love with technology just for the sake of it. So I agree with you that maybe real life stuff is much more tangible and much more satisfying. But one point I would make is like, and I'd say this to students, is like even if you're selling paintings at the side of the road, even if you're busking on a street and you've decided to kind of step out from technology and not to engage with it, someone's going to take a photo of you playing and send a tweet saying they think you're brilliant or they think you're rubbish. So you've no choice but to, you know, technology is going to engage you even if you don't want to engage with technology. So you're as well to kind of, I'd say, drive that process rather than sit back too much and let it happen.
I don't think the physical format is ever going to just die out. I don't think this is an MP3 versus CD a la VHS versus Betamax situation. I think that they're always going to be around. I think it's going to be very interesting when the generation like my kids come through and they're not even going to really know what CDs are, I don't think. So
I don't know what you just said. You're speaking French to me with all those initials. Yeah.
Oh, gotcha. Sorry, I'm a geek. That's why I'm sitting up here.
Yeah, it's the unfortunately geek panel. You know, the one thing I've said beforehand is not talk about coding, so everything else goes. You know.
I'm not touching the coding. I'm not. This VHS. Come on, we all know VHS is. But I think it's a cost thing too. Like, you know, the cost that it makes to like press CDs, to get them shipped, to send them off, versus to put your stuff through TuneCore to iTunes or on Bandcamp is way more cost effective to go digital, or SoundCloud. Yeah. Either way, I'm just. Yeah. Thanks. That was not awkward at all. I appreciate that.
And moving swiftly along before we start talking about Mixcloud or something like that. Any more questions? Lady in the front row.
I'm Nikki, by the way. Hi. My biggest fear would probably be that we're going to lose real instruments through technology, because a lot of sounds are being synthesized with products like Reason and stuff like that. Do you guys feel that way? Do you think we're going to lose that, you know, real guitars and real drums?
I don't at all. I think it's never going to happen. I think it comes in like phases. Like, you know, recently there's been a pretty big surgence of, I don't want to say chill wave, but, you know, electronic music where a lot of synthesizers have been prominent. But you can look back at the 80s and it was the same thing for a while there too. And then grunge came along and all of a sudden guitars are back in the main focus. I'm actually looking forward to when all the electronic stuff goes away. Like, I mean, I think they can use each other very well. Like, I think as technology keeps going, like, it's going to make organic instrumentation sound better. It's going to be higher quality. You can use it creatively and do things, you know, differently with certain instruments. But I just can't imagine there ever being a time where, you know, and I've seen this. There is a guy that actually came into the office 6 months ago where he played an entire, like, violin and orchestra on his iPad using a Wiimote by going like this. Whole strings, and just like he's holding his strings in the air with like nothing, and he's playing a violin, and it sounded like a violin. But is that ever gonna? Yeah, Invisible Instruments by Tim Su. Yeah, it's really cool, and it's very. I mean, I don't want to call it gimmicky, but it's not like you're gonna go watch somebody on stage like wail out on their iPad with a Wiimote in their hand.
We do. I mean, we go and see Deadmau5, you know.
Well, that's a little different, I think.
But also, but just in terms of that question as well, you know, there's sometimes we probably get a bit of hung up on the idea of technology. You know, in some ways, going back to I think it was you said earlier on, Colin. I mean, like drums, guitars, keyboards, that's technology as well. You know, it's the actual creative process. It's that process of actually writing a piece of music that will cause another human being to feel emotional, feel happy, feel sad, feel he can do better, feel he can't do better. You know, those things will never go away. You know, technology is never going to replace those because they're intuitive.
And I think what's really important for Irish bands is you're making music for a world community. You know, so some people will love the absolutely cutting edge sampling, looping, all that type of stuff, and then there'll be a global market for people who just want, you know, organic instruments played exactly as they sound. And with technology and the way the web is going, you can get to those people. So there will be different niches. People will, and I think what's brilliant about the way the web is spreading music is a lot of people are getting really eclectic tastes. People are loving all kinds of music. If you're good, you've got a story, you make good music, and you build a tribe, you know, there's no reason why that music won't be a massive part, and so will cutting edge music.
Look at the story in today's Irish Times. Look how much Dan has made from CDs. My God, you know, I mean, it's a market for everything. Next question. Girl back there.
Just a question to Cathal. If a fan was to share music on 45 Sound and you matched it up with your professional audio, is there any charge to that whatsoever?
This again is probably kind of a similar situation at a tech startup and bands. We're at this point at the moment where we think we're doing something cool, and we're, you know, like I said, providing a cool way for you to interact with your fans. So for hardworking class heroes, there's no charge at all. My vision for it is that we're based in Ireland. The reason I kind of came up with the idea is from videoing a lot of Irish bands and working with them. It's something I'd love to be able to offer to Irish bands free of charge, because I think we have an amazing scene here in Ireland, because we're not going to make a profitable company about what happens in Ireland. So at the moment, that's the way we're looking at it. There's no charge at the moment, and we're, just like you guys put out a certain amount of music, and you know, there's no point in putting massive prices on something if no one's going to use it. We want people talking about it. We want people trying out. We want to hear feedback. And then at some point, obviously, we have to make a profit. But really, you know, again, my view on technology has always been technology is just a set of tools. So I actually think the real power of our idea is in building a community. Because if you look and you're able to see, oh God, you know, I videoed those last 3 bands, and this other user on the site also videoed those 3. Now that user says they're going to go to this band next week that I haven't seen before. I might go along, might send them a message, might chat with them, might go along to that. Or what I'd love to see as well is when a band comes to Dublin or an Irish band playing, say, here, listen, we really appreciated you videoing us last time. You did a great video. Why not come along for free? You're on the guest list. So interactions like that. And we that's our challenge. Just like you guys have to figure out how to become professional musicians in this new world, our challenge is how to make it a profitable company. But I think if you're solving people's problems and people love what you're doing, then that can happen. The barrier for businesses, just like the barrier for music, is actually quite low. So if you have a good idea, just go ahead and do it. So that's our take on it at the moment, but no charge.
Cool. I think we've got time for one more question. Just put your hand up and we'll get a microphone to you. Excellent. No questions. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much for your patience, and I'd like to thank all the panelists as well for their time. Thank you.
Thanks.